Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, today we're going to be, today we're going to be talking about the masterclass is all based on our what we're calling campaign kit. It's our suite of campaign tools that is going to include discovery mode, marquee, showcase, and playlist pitching. All of these tools are designed to amplify your music right where streaming actually happens. And my name is Chris. I'm going to be joined by my colleague, Mo. I'm going to do a little introduction here before I pass it over to her to do the same. I'm a sales manager on our music team. I'm really spearheading the partnerships in general across our independent partners and focusing on those products, showcase, marquee, and discovery mode. Mo, over to you.
Thanks, Chris. Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for being here today. As Chris said, my name is Mo, and my work at Spotify focuses across all independent licensors and labels based out of the US. We really love to provide resources and education like today. Hopefully you learned something. Back over to you, Chris.
Oh, of course, they're going to learn something, Mo. And thank you for that. So for those of you who've already tested our campaign kit tools, I hope today's session will be a valuable reminder on best practices. And for those of you who are new to campaign kit, we're excited to share more. But before we jump into some things, I always love to get to know all of you a little bit better. And we're going to be running a little bit of an intro here for yourselves. So in the chat at the bottom of the right, can you please let us know if you are any of the following: an artist manager, part of a label team, potentially an agent, or really any other role that pertains to the music industry. We would just love to really get a feel for those of you out there.
Your dog would probably have to say the last one.
Saying rough. Yeah, that's right. Another role.
Another role.
Cool. Are we getting those in there? It's hard for me to see, but I think we are. I know this is all being handled by some folks in the background. Right. Fantastic. Thank you all. Well, that's fantastic. Thanks for the participation. Well, let's get started. As I mentioned before, today's session is all about covering the basics of the tools included in Campaign Kit, Discovery Mode, Marquee, Showcase, and Playlist pitching. And I'm sure questions are going to come up throughout this whole presentation, but we really ask, that you really refer to that Q&A section at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We'll set aside time at the end to go through this and address all of those questions. But in terms of the agenda, we'll start off with some context on why we're building a suite of campaign tools. We'll then spend about 10 minutes covering the basics for each of those 4 tools, and then we'll close with that Q&A. All right, so let's get started here. If we could pop to the next slide. Thank you very much. Okay, so the big question, why Campaign Kit? At Spotify for Artists, our goal has always been centered around creating the most effective formats for marketing your music to Spotify listeners. When we designed Campaign Kit, we assessed all of the reasons that other marketing tools simply aren't as effective. Our learning was that they simply are not built for music. When we looked at the 3 main components of a campaign, the timing, targeting, and measurement, we saw that non-music platforms fall short. Campaign Kit, on the other hand, was built upon the idea that there's a better place to run marketing campaigns, directly where that consumption is actually happening, on the world's biggest streaming platform, Spotify. So let's go through each of those in detail. First, we're going to talk about timing. On other platforms, your campaigns are reaching people when they're distracted, scrolling aimlessly through a busy social feed. But on Spotify, your campaigns reach listeners right when they're streaming and in the mood to discover new music or stream their favorite artists. Second, focusing on that audience. On those other platforms, your campaigns target people based off of broad demographics and interests. On Spotify, your campaigns reach listeners based on their real streaming behavior. And lastly, going into the reporting. On those other platforms again, you can't directly measure the impact of your campaigns on listening behavior. However, with us, you can directly impact how your campaign drove those listeners, and you can get more insights into the types of actions that they took to further their engagement, like saving or playlist adding. All of that being said, Campaign Kit was designed to turn up your music and build lifelong fans. So what's included in Campaign Kit? You mentioned a little bit before, but we're going to go through it again. From left to right, this includes playlist pitching, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. Playlist pitching lets you submit upcoming unreleased music to Spotify editors for playlist consideration, all with no cost attached to it. Then we have Discovery Mode, a campaign tool that enables you to amplify your reach in Spotify programming. Discovery Mode reaches listeners in personalized playlists with no upfront cost either. Then we have Showcase, our latest sponsored recommendation of your music to Spotify free and premium listeners. Showcase features new and catalog releases on home at any time. And lastly, we have Marquee, our sponsored recommendation for hyping up new releases with one of, if not the most engaging formats in the market. And because these tools were designed for marketing music to existing and prospective fans, they enable 3 key music goals. First, growing your audience. Sharing your music, both new and catalog music. What we're trying to do here is grow your Spotify artist total audience. Then we focus on driving engagement, aka engaging your biggest fans on the platform, your active audience, to turn them into even bigger fans. And lastly, we have reactivating your audience, bringing listeners who used to be fans back into the fold, but they haven't streamed recently. We want to make them those active audience members as well. And for example here, when we're talking about growing your audience, on average, 50% of people who've streamed catalog releases from a showcase were new listeners to that artist. And then focusing on driving engagement. On average, we saw that artists see a 50% increase in playlist ads during their first month. And then we focus on reactivating your audience. Our recent testing found that people in the previously active audience who saw a Marquee were 4 times more likely to convert. Incredible stats. And we know that these goals often coincide with big music marketing moments. Campaign Kit can help you to hype your new release by taking your new music to new heights. You can grow your audience with our suite of tools across the entire release cycle. You can also give your catalog an encore, fuel fandom for older tracks. Whether you're reviving a classic or celebrating a milestone, our tools will pump up your jams. Then capitalizing on trending songs, turn viral buzz into longer-term audience growth and development. Also, helping you to build a worldwide fan base. Go global. With Spotify's unique listener data, we help your music translate worldwide. We're going to dive into a few example strategies for how to think about using Campaign Kit to maximize these moments towards the back end of the deck. But first, let's dive into the details of each of these tools included in Campaign Kit. I'm going to be handing it over to Mo, who will first walk us through playlist pitching. Mo.
Thanks, Chris. I'm excited to take you all through the basics of playlist pitching. So, what is playlist pitching? Well, it enables artists and their teams to share upcoming unreleased music with our global team of playlist editors. Playlist pitching helps us find the best home for your new music. It's completely free for all artists and is available directly via the Spotify for Artists dashboard. Now, when you're about to drop a new release, head to the upcoming section of the music tab within Spotify for Artists to submit a song for playlist consideration. We included a view of the playlist pitching tool for you right here. So as you can see, when you pitch, you'll also have the option to pin the pitched song to your This Is playlist if you have one. Pinning a song guarantees that listeners will see it first when they navigate to your This Is playlist. So it's a great way to drive awareness about your new music. Now, a few things to keep in mind about playlist pinning. You may only submit one pinning request at a time. Now, once that pinned song goes live, you may submit additional requests. Songs are then pinned for up to 28 days post-release in the order they are requested. In other words, with the earliest pinned song appearing first. And once the new song is available to listeners on Spotify, pinning takes about 3 days. So let's discuss a few tips and tricks for navigating playlist pitching. When you pitch a song for playlist consideration, you'll see the option to add additional context about your release, like the genre, instrumentation, and more. You can see what the final submit page looks like here. It's always a good idea to provide as much context as possible when submitting a pitch. And from a timing perspective, pitching a song at least 7 days in advance helps your chances of getting playlisted. And it also enables our teams to add your new release to your followers' release radar playlists. Now, finally, we definitely recommend taking advantage of the playlist pinning tool if you have a This Is playlist. Even if your song isn't selected for a playlist, this will still make sure it's pinned to the top of your This Is playlist. And that pretty much covers playlist pitching. I know that was a very quick overview of the basics, but please feel free to submit any questions below to be addressed in our Q&A session, which will happen at the end of this masterclass. I'll now pass it back to Chris to walk us through 3 more campaign kit tools: Discovery Mode, Marquee, and Showcase. Back to you.
Amazing, Mo. Thank you so much. And we'll start out with our super popular tool, Discovery Mode. So what is Discovery Mode? This is a tool designed to help you expand the reach of your songs in Spotify's personalized playlists. We'll get a bit more into, in the following pages about Discovery Mode, but one of the key features we want to make sure is, heard across the board is that there is no upfront cost to this tool. We created Discovery Mode to help you get heard when listeners are most open to discovery. When they're streaming from playlists like radio, autoplay, daily mixes, and artist mixes. We refer to any of these personalized playlists where Discovery Mode is active as Discovery Mode contexts. Discovery Mode can spark repeat listeners and drive impressive results. Our testing have found that on average, in the first month of using Discovery Mode, artists saw a 50% increase in saves, a 44% increase in user playlist ads, and a 37% increase in follows. Discovery Mode is also an effective tool for building a global fan base. We've found that more than 55% of all first-time artist discoveries from tracks within Discovery Mode came from listeners outside of the artist's home country. So how does Discovery Mode work? With Discovery Mode, you identify songs that are a priority for you, and our system adds that signal to the algorithms that determine Spotify's listeners' personalized playlist listening sessions. This signal increases the likelihood of the selected songs being recommended, but it does not guarantee it. With Discovery Mode, you have the ability to influence listeners' personalized recommendations. Personalized recommendations are based on a variety of signals, such as genres listened to, relevance, song length, and more. We believe that you should all have the ability to inform personalized recommendations based on your priorities and what you have to say about your music. So how do you get started with Discovery Mode? Discovery Mode is available for artists and their teams via the Spotify for Artists dashboard on desktop. Starting on the 11th of each month, you can head to the Campaigns tab to check out the list of tracks that are eligible for your next campaign. If it's your first campaign, we'll recommend songs that we believe are more likely to perform well in Discovery Mode compared to your other songs. And from a timing perspective, campaign setup is open until the end of each month, and campaigns become active on the first day of the following month. Starting on the 11th of each month, you can view campaign results for any currently running campaigns directly in the Spotify for Artists dashboard. Reports for live campaigns are updated daily for the current month, starting on the 11th until the last day of the month. But be sure to check back after 14 days after the month ends for final results. You can also always revisit reports by clicking into past campaigns via the Campaigns tab in Spotify for Artists. Now, one of Discovery Mode's key features is its pricing model. With Discovery Mode, you do not need that upfront budget. Instead, when Discovery Mode is turned on for a song, a 30% commission is applied to recording royalties generated from all streams of that selected track in Discovery Mode contexts. Note that all of the other streams of that track URI outside of those Discovery Mode contexts remain commission-free. The commission is deducted from future Spotify royalty statements, so again, no upfront cash budgets are required. All of this being said, our goal with Discovery Mode is to give artists at all stages of their career access to the powerful tools they need to grow and develop a fan base. Okay, so that was a quick overview of the basics of Discovery Mode. Now we're going to move on to two other tools that we have, Marquee and Showcase. So what are Marquee and Showcase? Marquee and Showcase are campaign tools that enable you to share new and catalog music with listeners who are likely to engage with your content. In this visual, Marquee is on the left and Showcase is on the right. I realize I might be mirrored here, by the way, but you're getting what I'm saying. Marquee appears as a full screen sponsored recommendation of your new release. By contrast, Showcase appears as a mobile banner at the top of Spotify Home. Unlike Marquee, Showcase also supports catalog music, so you can promote music outside of that new release window as well. Although both products share similar campaign setup, targeting, and reporting, they also differ in their content and timing, customizations, and pricing. Now, as mentioned, campaign setup across both products is quite similar. When you're ready to book a Showcase or Marquee campaign, you can head to the Campaigns tab in Spotify for Artists on desktop. You'd start by selecting the Create Showcase button. You then will be prompted to select the content that you'd like to promote with Showcase. The same is true for setting up a Marquee. You just hit the Marquee tab and create the campaign from there. Once you've selected the promotable content, you'll see a few ways that you can customize your campaign. One of the biggest ways is through campaign targeting, which is the same across both Showcase and Marquee. With campaign targeting, you can target different audience segments based on how they engage with your music. These segments include your active audience, which is made up of light, moderate, and super listeners, your previously active audience, your potential audience, and your programmed audience. We'll get into who is included in each of these segments on the following page. You can reach these segments of listeners in over 36 markets. Now, on another note, campaigns booked in Spotify for Artists use what we'd call delivery optimization to reach listeners most likely to stream the promoted release after seeing the recommendation. This means that when you target super listeners, for example, you'll automatically reach super listeners who are most likely to stream. Our targeting segments are aligned with 3 key music marketing goals: audience growth, audience engagement, and that audience reactivation. For example, if your goal is to grow your audience, you should consider targeting your programmed audience or your potential audience. Your programmed audience includes listeners who've only heard your music in programmed contexts, like editorial playlists over the past 2 years. Then your potential audience includes listeners who haven't heard your music at all on Spotify over the last 2 years, including net new listeners. Next, if your goal is to drive engagement with current fans, you should consider targeting your active audience. Your active audience includes listeners who've intentionally streamed your music within the past 28 days from sources including the artist profile, the release page, or their own library and playlists. Within that active audience, as we previously noted, it's made up of your super fans, who are your most dedicated listeners over the last 28 days, your moderate listeners, who've intentionally streamed your music many times within the last same 28-day window, and then your light listeners, who've intentionally streamed your music once or really a couple times within the last same 28-day frame. Finally, if your goal is to reactivate listeners who used to listen to your music, you should consider targeting your previously active audience. These are listeners who used to be a part of your active audience, but haven't streamed your music intentionally within that last 28 days. And with delivery optimization, if you choose to forego audience targeting, you'll reach any listeners on Spotify who are most likely to stream, which can include both new and existing listeners. As I mentioned before, all of the above targeting are available for both Marquee and Showcase campaigns booked and managed in Spotify for Artists. And the final similarity across both of these tools is campaign reporting. The campaign reporting included in the animation here is available via the Campaigns tab in S4A, again on desktop. In campaign reporting, you'll find campaign delivery metrics like reach and clicks, but you'll also find music-centric insights. These things like your campaign intent rate or the percent of listeners who went on to save or playlist your music for future streaming, and engagement with other releases, or how listeners went on to stream your broader catalog after streaming your promoted release. Campaign results will begin populating when your release is live, but you should check back after 14 days after the campaign has concluded for the final results. We measure user engagement for 14 days post-campaign to understand how your listeners continued to engage with your music. We also highlight audience development metrics to help you evaluate how your campaign enabled your campaign goals, like growing and developing your audience. These insights are unique to Spotify and aren't available on any other ad platform. Moving on to the differences between the products, starting with the types of content that can be promoted. It's important to remember that Marquee is only available for new music, and the campaigns must begin within 21 days of that release date. By contrast, you can run a showcase for any release at any moment. Let's look at the visual here. Let's say you had a big album coming. You could consider running a showcase for a catalog release in advance of the album with the headline, "Releasing Music Soon," in order to prime that audience. Running a marquee or showcase for the new album when it drops, and then continue highlighting that album with additional showcase campaigns. Another big difference between Marquee and Showcase are the customizations. With Marquee, you can customize your campaign by choosing the color of the promotion and the destination, like an artist's This Is playlist, meaning that when listeners click on the Marquee, they'll be guided to your This Is playlist with the new single pinned at the top, sort of like what Mo was talking about before. Whereas Marquee's headline is always New Music for You, Showcase allows you to pick from several headlines, such as You Might Like, Recently Released, Getting Buzz, and more. These headlines help to add context to your promotions. And finally, Marquee and Showcase have slightly different price points. While both are priced on a cost per click basis, so you're only charged for the clicks you receive, Showcase's cost per click is about 20% lower than that of Marquee. Both Marquee and Showcase have minimum budgets of $100 per territory, and the self-serve booking flow can help you identify your ideal budget by predicting your estimated reach, clicks, and likelihood to deliver at different price points. Now that was a lot of information, so let's bring it all together by showing you some examples of how you might use Campaign Kit, the tools all together strategically. As I mentioned previously, Campaign Kit is really designed to support key marketing moments, like hyping a new release, giving catalog an encore, capitalizing on trending songs, and building a worldwide fan base. Now that we've covered the basics of the tools, we wanted to bring it all together by showing a few illustrative examples of how you might pair Campaign Kit tools to make the most out of each of those moments. These are, of course, just examples. There are tons of different ways you can use the tools together strategically during each of the moments and to enable different goals. So let's start out with how you might hype a new release. Let's say you have a big upcoming album. You might consider the pre-release moment to grow your audience in advance of the drop by opting in songs from your catalog into discovery mode. In parallel, you could prime that audience by promoting a particularly well-performing song with Showcase with the headline, "Releasing music soon." You could also consider targeting your previously active audience to bring them back into that fold in advance of the new album. And as always, during this pre-release period, we recommend that you pitch any standout tracks from the release for playlist consideration. Then, when your new album drops, you could capitalize on that momentum by reactivating that previously active audience we talked about with a marquee campaign. Then, post-release, you could run a showcase to target your most engaged listeners, that active audience, with the headline, "Recently released." Because of Showcase and Marquee's exclusion targeting, you'll only reach listeners within your active audience who have not actively streamed the album. Focusing on that previously active audience during release week and then using exclusion targeting to only target active listeners who have not streamed is a great strategy because it gives your biggest fans a chance to stream organically. Okay, now let's look at an example of giving your catalog an encore. Let's say you're interested in bringing more listeners into your catalog and you're coming up on a big release anniversary. You might consider running a showcase with the headline, "Release Anniversary," and no campaign targeting to reach any listeners on Spotify who are most likely to stream. You could also build more hype by using discovery mode to promote your catalog. And when your discovery mode campaign ends, you could use reporting to identify which songs performed best to then run a showcase campaign to continue that momentum. And now looking at how you might want to capitalize on trending music. Let's say that you've seen a past hit go viral on social media recently and you want to really drive additional hype on Spotify. You could start by opting the trending song into discovery mode to share it with new listeners. You can then run multiple showcase campaigns. You could grow your audience by using Showcase with the headline, "Getting Buzz," to share the trending songs with listeners in your programmed and potential audiences. Later on, you could deepen fandom with listeners who discovered you during that viral moment by running a showcase campaign for another catalog hit to target your active audience with the headline, "You Might Like." And finally, you could opt songs in from your broader catalog into discovery mode to continue to grow that audience. And lastly, let's look at how you might use Campaign Kit to build a worldwide fan base of an upcoming album, in advance of an upcoming album, sorry. Beginning a discovery mode campaign on catalog songs to reach those global fans. You could then use those results to inform your showcase strategy, like what markets have the lowest listenership based on your Spotify for Artists audience data. Then you could run a showcase to grow your audience in those markets by targeting your programmed and potential audiences. Again, during this pre-release period, we recommend you pitch any standout tracks from the release for playlist consideration. Then when the album drops, you could run a marquee for the new release in the same international markets. This time targeting your active audience, which may include listeners that you brought in with your showcase campaign. And finally, post-release, you could opt songs from the new album into discovery mode to continue building a global fan base in advance of future new music. You could even consider continuing that momentum with showcase campaigns for songs that are performing especially well. I'm out of breath, everybody. I could use a drink of water, but having your participation at this point, by the way, thank you all for listening. I really do appreciate it. I know Mo does as well. We mentioned before, we're going to leave time for Q&A. We threw a ton of information at you. I believe the Q&A is popping off here. This is incredible. Let's open that up and see where we are. All right. Here we go. Thank you all for dropping these questions in here. Please continue to do so as we run through these. So, what is actually being done? This is the first question. What is actually being done in the back end to push reactivating an audience? Well, in the back end, we're able, again, being the place where streaming is actually happening, we know who these fans are. We know how much they're consuming and when they're consuming it. So reactivating that audience are those folks who have not intentionally streamed you within the last month. What we do when that's happening is specifically target them. When we do so with each of our showcase and marquee tools is really force active streaming. That's a really beautiful piece of these two tools, is that what we're able to do is not only reach those folks, but we're able to kind of grab them from the bucket they're currently in and move them to the active audience where we really want them to be. So it's all about leveraging that first party data to know who we should be reaching with that campaign. We have some of the best data in the world, and we're just leveraging it with your promotions. Victoria, great question. Next we have, would you agree that for an artist to meet the minimum thresholds of audience sizes within the platform to qualify for these programs, external social ads well executed are fundamental to grow within Spotify? Any other recommendations outside of collaborations and actively pitching and releasing? Great question, Jose. I do believe it's important to always be reaching your fans really wherever they are. However, it's hard to say which fan base is going to connect on which platforms. You know, some are in one location, other fans may be into gaming on Twitch or something like that. So it's hard to say exactly where those have to go. However, it's impossible to really track them and make sure that they are, falling into this audience. It's great that you might get a click somewhere, but what actually happened? If you're continuing to see that growth within your audience, from outside platforms, it's wonderful. The pieces about leveraging collaborations and actively pitching and releasing, those are integral in this whole space. Lots of artists are doing way more collaborations than I'd say they ever have. I'd say you're pretty much covering off on all of your bases, though. If you're making sure you reach them on social and then really drive the conversion and awareness on Spotify, that's really a great harmonious sort of thing. So I think you're kind of covering off on most of those bases. However, Jose, I don't have every answer to tell you exactly what to do, but it feels like you're on the right path. Cool. Brad, we got a playlist pitching question. This is going to be for Mo here. So Mo, what are the best details to include in the paragraph section? Are you more interested in the creative process, the artist's existing press and media coverage off platform, or the marketing plan for the single?
The answer to that question is yes. Our editors are interested in all of that information. Kind of echoing what Chris just said, it depends on a specific artist and their genre and maybe where they are in the release cycle in terms of which forms of those tools they'll be leveraging. But yes, if there's like really exciting press that means a lot to you, that means a lot to your artist genre, then definitely include it. If you're putting more money towards a specific part of marketing than you ever have before, include that. If you're really passionate and excited about a tour that's coming up and you're selling out 750 cap rooms, like that's huge. And that just shows that there's more demand around your music than just on our platform. So any way that you can kind of like paint the picture and tell the story is super helpful to our team to be able to understand a little bit more about what is happening so that it's not just one song that's existing in a vacuum.
Awesome. Yeah. And Mo, you're going to be on the hot seat for the next couple one here. So get ready. We got a question from Daniel coming. For playlist pitching, how much info is too much? I'm always concerned about a TLDR pitch.
Well, you can't really put too much information because we do have a character cap, so don't be too concerned about that. And it's really just the same information or the same approach that I was just mentioning before about just like packing whatever you can in terms of what is relevant and what's going to make sense for your specific release.
All right. Got another playlist one here for you, Mo. Can you expand on the categories of playlist pitching and what they mean, i.e. song style?
These categories are helpful for our editors in terms of figuring out where to place these songs. So you're going to know better than anyone listening to the music as far as like what type of genre it is. Like, for instance, we don't just have hip hop as a genre. We have drill, we have grime, we have like, there are all these different subgenres, if you will, inside of all the different ones. So that is just really a space for you to get really specific about what the release, about some of those attributes of your release. And then when our editors are listening to the music, it gives them just a bit more of a holistic picture of like the sonic side of the song. And then that's going to make sure that when they are placing it into correct playlist, that it's something that's actually going to resonate with the mainstay audience of that list.
Looks like we got Jose back in here. Awesome to see the participation. What's the rollout criteria for indie artists since discovery mode is not available to everybody? We are distributors. Anything we can do for our artists to enable discovery? Jose, it's a great question. These are generally partnerships. So we essentially bring on partners every single month. There's a small like allotment that we try to bring on. I would actually ask you to just reach out to me directly. I can try to facilitate the right folks to, there's essentially like a queue of partners that we try to bring on. So we'll likely be able to bring you on and add you to the list. So if you could, feel free to reach out to me. I know somebody on the back end here, if you don't mind, in maybe the chat or in the type answer button, if you could just put my email in there, let Jose know he could just reach out to me. That'd be helpful. All right, moving on to the next one here. If a song in discovery mode is re-released on an album, does that remove the song from the discovery mode campaign that month? No, so a song being opted in, it's that song being opted in is in the program, whether it be re-release. There are some eligibility changes within discovery mode as of late, but we are focused a bit more on what we'd call the recording level. So it's in the program this month, nothing's really going to change. However, when you opt into the subsequent month, we'll be looking at those collectively in terms of eligibility and make sure that the most accurate version is put or is eligible for the program. So nothing will happen just without your knowledge about it. It might just impact what's going to happen the following month. Cool. Next question here from Robert. Will Showcase and Marquee be opened up to all artists? Many of my songs have over 100,000 plays. When I've tried to access these options, they haven't been available because my audience is too small. So Robert, we are trying to expand access to Showcase and Marquee to really every artist and their team. It's very difficult to do so, so it's a bit of a slower process. So we do appreciate you sort of, working alongside with us. As of right now, though, the tools should be available to all teams in the United States, Canada, the UK, Australia, and France. I believe it's all 5 of those territories, and we're going to continue that expansion really as often as we possibly can. You should be able to, though, assuming you meet certain eligibility criteria like listeners and streams and things like that, it should be available to you. So, Robert, I'd ask that you reach out to me. It's really my first last name at spotify.com. We can talk about if there's any particular artists, because sometimes as we, expand that eligibility piece, could just be a couple clicks of a button and we might be able to get it to you properly, but we can chat that out another time directly. So thank you for the question. Next we have, is this effective for album/EPs where multiple tracks are being promoted at once? A bit vague, Alex. I got to tell you, I'm not 100% sure what you're asking in terms of the effectiveness, but I guess I could say if we're talking about effective for where multiple tracks are being promoted at once, it's hard to say if you're talking about playlist promotion, discovery mode, Marquee, and Showcase. If you could maybe roll back up and add a little more context to that, we can hopefully get to it. Next we have here, how can we guarantee that our budget will have long-lasting effects when it comes to Showcase? That we can retarget with specific data and that. This showcase will not force audiences to feel overwhelmed on their homepages and begin to ignore these ads. Gabriella, there's no way to guarantee anything. That's just really an impossibility. However, I will tell you that we know that these ads, compared to every other social ad, we've studied these continuously, they have longer lasting effects. I can say that, with the full truth, not trying to hide anything there. We also frequency cap our ads. I would talk to you about being ignored or people getting like fatigue from these things. This is the last place that an audience is going to feel that. We have incredibly tight frequency caps. Anybody can only see a certain number of marquee and showcase campaigns during any week, not only from your campaign, but overall. So the idea of driving fatigue is almost non-existent. That is a surety I have there. And we're talking about retargeting them with specific data. This is really the beauty of those metrics that we show you in the campaigns tab. So when you see you're reaching this group of folks or that, you can then go into those results, see how many people moved, down the funnel, up the funnel, wherever they may be. And that's what you're going to use to then set up your following campaign. So the metrics are all there. They're in front of you. It's up to you to really decide how to leverage it with your subsequent campaign. It's definitely some work to be doing, but to make something really effective, it's not the easiest thing. You got to dig into that data, but it's going to be there for you. Great question. Do the CTAs affect performance or targeting? Derek, great question. So this is specific to Showcase. This is the only time you can really customize that CTA. We're talking about the headlines that we have there. We're currently studying that. Showcase is such a new tool. We actually get asked this question a lot. The thing is it's really not about technically the performance. It's how you want to present this piece of content to the right folks, right? So if you mismatch a headline with what's happening, if we tell you this headline works best, but you apply it to the wrong piece of content, it's going to lower the performance, right? So it's really all about who you want to reach and just how you want to reach them. There's no sort of silver bullet to any of this. It's all about understanding who the people are you're trying to reach and then doing it properly with the right targeting and the right CTA. But if you want to talk about a strategy ever, Derek, sorry, Mo.
I like when you give examples of CTA, like a pairing.
What a good pairing would be,
Yeah.
right? So if you have like the idea of like an anniversary release, right? Or actually, I'll use this one always. Or again, there's kind of mismatches here, but let's say you were going to be promoting sort of like a deep cut track, right? Maybe it's an acoustic version of a fan base's song that they love, right? Going super broad with it in the targeting is probably not going to be your best bet. You're going to want to go after more of that core audience because it's such, like we're saying, this deep cut track, and use a corresponding headline, not just something like, hey, we have music out. It's like, we know you're going to like this. You might like. This is the version you want to focus on, the core fans with a you might like headline there. So it's really all about just coordinating those. It's not just these two things are the best performing. It all has to tie to the content properly, or there's going to be a mismatch. All right, on to Thomas. Showcase has been an issue for me because the intro track on my album is a slow instrumental, not representative of the rest of my album. I fear I'm turning potential listeners away since it automatically starts with them on the intro track. Do you all have any thoughts on this? Truthfully, that's really up to the artist. Thomas, if you are the artist or you're helping this artist out who we're talking about, that's really up to you, the sequencing, how you want to present that. I wouldn't say that that's necessarily a Showcase problem. You're just presenting the content to them, trying to get it to the right folks. How they're going to then consume that is not really up to Showcase. Any promotion you're going to have is going to drive to that product, and they're going to have the same sort of experience. We could definitely talk about, sequencing different and how you want to do things like that. But if that's really your concern, that you may be turning people away, I think it may be an opportunity to just look at the sequencing of the content on that album.
Also, maybe Marquee for Showcase, or sorry, Marquee for This Is would be a better solution there. If you do have a This Is playlist, Thomas, then it'll probably serve like our algorithms will serve to your listeners songs that are maybe a bit more popular rather than some of those tracks that are there for like setting the vibe, if you will. So if you do have a This Is playlist, maybe that's something you could think about doing.
Right. The only thing, Mo, with that, this, if we're talking about an album, can't put the whole album with top of the This Is. So I do want to make sure we're on top
Yeah.
of that as well. Yeah. So being a single, getting the right folks in with another, trying to like lead them into this, that could be the way, and then reaching them with that showcase at a later time. So yeah, it doesn't just have to be for that one piece of content. As we talked about having these plans, what are you really trying to do? Getting the right folks sort of like primed or ginned up for the bigger album. That's really what you want to focus on if this is a potential concern for you. Cool. Moving on to Tom here. If you have 25 songs eligible for discovery mode, is it better to pick all 25 or just your top 5 best performing songs? There is really no exact answer to this. Every single piece of content is almost its own case study. And that's really the truth. Even if you have your top 5, maybe that 6th song could be the best performing one. You're really never going to know. It's not my position to tell you to put everything in or put a smaller amount in. We do like to rely on these, what we call the pre-campaign insights, the PCI data that we put in discovery mode for you. It's likely going to tell you which ones we expect to be the best performing. However, if you want to buck against that or just give it a try with certain things, you can opt in all 25, see how things go, and make the necessary changes in the following month, or even letting it sit for 2 months. It's not to say there's always like a clean cut answer for that. Every artist, their fan base, and each one of those tracks is very specific to make that connection. All right, Sarah, I got a playlist question here, Mo. When pitching songs for playlist placement, is it okay to mention playlists that you feel the song would be a good fit for?
You can really mention whatever you would like to do in that text box. I would typically say the space in that text box is going to be better used mentioning something else, just because our editors who curate these playlists spend all day in our back end putting these playlists together. So they'll listen to a song and pretty quickly be able to understand where they should place it. So it's kind of like telling a doctor, like, how to hold the scalpel, like a surgeon, like they know what they're doing. And it's best to just kind of like let them ride and let them take it and determine what they'd like to do with your music. The one time I'd say that it is actually helpful is if you have a song that is in a really, really specific niche and you know one exact playlist that we have that it would be perfect for, like something in like the hyper pop or like dance genre specific, like sigilcore or something like that, then sure, maybe it's helpful with like some of those newer genres. But typically I would say it's not the best use of that space, just because our editors are really in the weeds and they know like where everything kind of like should be placed. So in my opinion, I would say like leave it up to the experts.
Awesome. Great response, Mo. Marco here. Is there a cost for discovery mode? If so, who does that work? I'm going to bring myself back to a couple slides here. I was hoping this landed, but maybe, Marco, you joined a little bit late, but there's no cost to discovery mode. It's a much more complex way that we, talk about the finances of the program. It's really all about actually something we're going to be talking about on the next question here, Marco, but it's what happens is, of the content you've opted into discovery mode, if consumption is happening in one of those discovery mode contexts, the recording royalty on that track, there will be a 30% commission applied to that royalty. So there's no cost, but that's really how that functions. And if you want some further clarity, again, feel free to reach out to me, but we did try to go over that a bit earlier in the programming. All right, Kirk Smith. In Showcase, if we have a single from an album to focus on, but it was never released as a single, how can I make that one song an option to focus on? With this tool, with Showcase and Marquee, you cannot. We drive to the product page And that's again because of the way these things have to serve and certain listeners have to arrive at the content itself. Sadly, in this case, there's no way to do so. We would say, if you want to, remove it, re-deliver it as a single, and then we can leverage Showcase to drive to it. All right. When will Marquee be open to European markets, Latvia and Poland? Great question. This is a constant thing that we are focusing on. As I mentioned before, expanding accessibility is something we're absolutely focused on in 2024. I don't have exact dates. I know you're asking about specific Latvia and Poland. I do not have the exact dates on those, but I will again call out that currently in France and the UK, these tools are available for purchase in S4A. All right, next. And by the way, we're getting a little close to time here. We only have a few more minutes. I just want to call that out. But next question. I haven't been able to use the customize my active audience because I do not have enough listeners. What's the size that your active audience needs to be in order to be able to customize your audience? So this is not about a certain size. It's what we determine to be, it's a much deeper calculation. And this is going to get very nerdy on you, but we're all trying to get down to that $100 minimum. That's really where we have to get to. So whether you start here at the size of the audience, then people falling into this bucket, we then attach a potential click-through rate that we believe within the campaign flight, how many people are actually going to convert, multiplied by that local cost per click. Does that kick out to that $100 minimum? So it's a bit more complex. It's not, there's not like a line drawn in the sand. It's about size and engagement and pricing. So just to put that out there, Simon, it's much more than that besides just, I need this many listeners. Right, Daniel, awesome. How is an audience targeted? A lot of our streamers are local to our area, and they commonly listen to a lot of other local artists. These other local artists are often not similar to our music, which I believe may skew our similar artist stats. So the similar artist stats have nothing to do with this at all. We're focused on you. You're running these programs from your profile. We know who is currently engaging with your content and who we believe will, regardless of what else is listed just in the similar artist stats. That's interesting to see that, but that's not exactly influencing who we target with these. So how the audience is targeted is all based on, depends on what group. Are they part of that active audience? That means they've leaned in and have listened to your content in the last 28 days. Previously active, have they taken those actions between 1 month ago and 2 years? Then we move into programmed listeners. Those are the ones who have listened to you from a programmed source. And then potential listeners being the ones we think will be the most likely to engage with it, including net new listeners. So it's all about, again, leveraging that first party data. It's not just looking at the similar artist stats. So good call out, but it's much more complex than just seeing the similar artists listed on your profile. All right, cool. We're going to try to get to like 1 or 2 more here. All right, how soon after a new release does it become available for discovery mode? Is it the first month after the first 28 days? Yeah, so a piece of content has to have been released for 30 days to become eligible. So it depends, if you do it to the back end of 1 month, let's say you release something on the 20th, it's not going to be available for the subsequent month. You'd have to wait a whole nother month. You're almost waiting like 40 days at that time. This just rough math here for it to be eligible, for it to then go live in discovery mode. So a 30-day window of it being released. All right, that was a quick one. Let's try to squeeze one more in. Maybe this is answered. I joined late. Are Spotify promo tools the only promo tools that should be used? Alvin, that is a great question. I would tell you, I would love for that to be the case. It would be disingenuous to say that. As we mentioned before, fans are everywhere. You know your fan base best. You want to go find them. Maybe they're on socials. That's great. Drive that awareness. Let them know something's happening. But using our tools, and I really do fully believe this, we have studied it. I would never be lying to you. They are the most effective at reaching the right people and converting them. So it's very important to make sure you are leveraging Spotify's promo tools, but I couldn't tell you they're the only ones to use. And I think we are at time, Mo. This has been amazing with you. And thank you to all of you who participated so much. It was great to see there are so many open questions still. I believe my email was dropped. Please reach out to me. It's totally cool. We can talk about all of these things if you want to chat a bit more. Mo, any last words?
It's Friday, so all smiles
Friday,
over here.
yes. Yes, absolutely. Again, thank you all for joining. This has been incredibly just engaging and everything like that. I hope you all took a lot away from it. And I'll see you probably in my inbox. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you all.
All right, goodbye.
Bye.